Hello everyone. In this video, I'm going to try and help you conduct academic research better and improve our research literacy. I think that this is really important, and so I've decided to make this brief three-part video series to help you do this better. Now, this first video is dedicated to doing research on the front end. This is conducting your own research and finding new resources to use, not just looking at articles that you already have. And so that's what I'm going to cover mostly here is getting your own research, tips for finding good scholarly articles, and quickly evaluating them using what I'm referring to here as a quick glance protocol. So let's get into some of these tips and hopefully make your life a little bit easier. Now let's begin by considering why I'm bothering to make this video to begin with. First of all, uh, research literacy is a huge problem. Why is it a huge problem? Why am I saying that? Well, I'm sure you have seen plenty of evidence of this in your everyday life, but you may not feel qualified to really weigh in on it. Well, I'm trying to help you fix that problem. So there's a lot of bad information out there. Some of it is intentionally misleading. Usually it's probably just a product of research illiteracy. What I'm referencing here would be, for example, if you look at I don't know, Washington Post article that says new study shows XXX, it almost never does, right? If you go look at the study and you understand it enough to engage with it, you'll find, that was kind of misleading, that was sensationalized, or in some cases downright untrue. That's a problem. Almost every headline you read that starts with new research proves is doing absolutely nothing of the sort. And so one of my goals here is to help us improve our research literacy. What I mean by that is your ability to engage with academic research and scholarship, to break through those barriers of jargon and methods and all that stuff that makes it harder for people to grasp the truth. Now, some of that is necessary, right? These are technical things. We're talking about usually technical studies, scientific studies, things that are coming from an area of expertise by people who are experts in their field. And so a lot of things get lost in translation when it comes to complicated language and words. However, there are some tips that I can give you to be able to get a basic understanding of what most academic research is trying to get at. And the more you do that, the better you will get at doing it. So what will this technique do for you and what will it not do for you? Well, theoretically, this will make your life easier. I believe that. I think this is going to be useful to you if you care about learning and understanding things and kind of getting to the bottom of whatever issue is at hand. Doing your own research, as it were. I'm going to help you try and do that. Now, you may not like this technique so much if you're a little more type A and you are really married to doing things in order, because I'm going to take you out of order on this one. My philosophy here is to get a big picture understanding and then bring it in and start filling in the big picture with those little details. This is based on kind of how we learn as we grow up, and I think that it applies here as well. So you will get the context to plug the details into by using this technique. It works well for getting a general understanding of a given topic quickly. It will not replace, however, the hard work needed to apply that content into different contexts. And it's not going to make you an immediate expert either. It will make you more informed, however, and reading more articles in this way, increasing your throughput, so to speak, will eventually help you become an expert in a given area if you so choose to dedicate that kind of energy and time. But the whole reason I'm talking about this is that so you don't have to dedicate that kind of energy and time into becoming an expert in every single thing that you're trying to read. That's not always necessary, and more likely it's just going to confuse you at this stage of your career. So, first things first, I recommend the first thing you do is decide on a note-taking system. Before you even find any articles, read into your class assigned readings, whatever it may be, decide on a note-taking system. Everyone, of course, has their own preferences. I have some suggestions and some recommendations. One, I like writing things down. You tend to retain things better when you actually physically write them down rather than when you take notes on your computer, but there are benefits to taking notes on your computer as well, namely organization and being able to tweak the documents. But that's not always necessary, and it might be inefficient. But you do what works for you. Whatever you do, you want to make sure you have a way to account for who wrote the article, when they wrote it, what the heck they're talking about, and also have a way to keep track of definitions, terms that come up, because those are going to keep coming up. And the more of those words you learn, the more that vocabulary you learn, the easier this whole process will get. You'll also want to be able to take note of questions. Sometimes the questions are more important than writing down all the facts from someone's literature review. That's important too, but don't feel like you need to reproduce everything that they wrote in the article. You should save the article and reference it later. You should highlight it, all those things. So make sure that you are writing down definitions, questions, and the main point of what they're trying to do. That may include hypotheses tested. It may include the thesis. It may include just what it was really interesting from the conclusion, so you can take note of it in your notes and remember what the heck that article was about, because you're probably going to read a lot of articles. Use the same headings or abbreviations as are in the article, or abbreviations of those headings that are in the article. That can help you, again, find the material later when you're trying to, well, I remember they said this thing, but I don't remember exactly what it was about. I think it was in this section. Our brains tend to work in that associative manner, so if you are able to reproduce some of the order of the article in your note-taking system, that will be beneficial to you as well. You're also going to want to get comfortable marking the document. I mentioned above that you should highlight the document. Most PDF viewers allow you to do that. You can highlight or you can comment directly on the digital document. I will be doing this video in that context as if you are looking at PDFs, and that's something you should do as well. That can be particularly helpful if you're a visual or associative learner. That's kind of how I picture myself. So if there's something that jumps out to me, I will highlight it in the document and save the document with the highlights. And then I can, when I'm trying to recall what that little fact was, I can summon up the image of the highlighted section in my brain. I think a lot of people's brains work that way, so I recommend that as well. Let's move on to the actual tips for conducting a search. Here's the 6 tips I'm recommending for this technique I'm referring to as a quick glance protocol. Now, we're going to go through these individually. 1, start general to understand the scope of the issue. 2, search for scholarly articles, not just Wikipedia pages. 3, refine your search accordingly. 4, read the abstract and refine a quick glance protocol. Save the document is step 5. And then 6, reread it front to back if deeper understanding is needed. Often it is, sometimes it's not. Now, dealing with each one of these steps individually, let's talk about it. Step 1, start general to understand the scope of the issue. This is your Wikipedia pages, this is your blogs, this is your op-eds, this is whatever pops up on Google. But the most common mistake I see students making is they stop there. It's not going to be useful to you to find that general information and then use that as a reference in your paper. It's not going to be good enough. It's going to be too general. You're just going to be finding citations to support like, oh, obesity is bad. We know obesity is bad. You need to do a little bit more than that in your paper, presumably, if you're doing research for a reason. But that doesn't mean starting with the Wikipedia page can't be a great way to get an overview of the issue, because getting that scope of the issue is really important. Understanding how long it's been studied, who did the most amazing discoveries, and what is the current state of things. That can be really useful before you start searching, so you know what to look for and you know what kind of context to plug it in. Again, big picture, going down to the micro. So do start general to understand the scope of the issue. When you have a good understanding of the issue, it's time to get more specific. And by specific, the first thing you should be doing is focusing on scholarly materials. They are more specific. They're usually looking at a specific facet of an issue, and that can be a little frustrating if you're new to this because it's very precise and you want to know all these other questions. Well, that's why we start general. Then we search for scholarly articles. You can do this through your library website or Google Scholar, or whatever other resource provides you with scholarly articles. These two are pretty good options. Google Scholar will sometimes throw you up against a paywall. So to avoid that, if you're a university student, go through your library website. You can search the same things you can search on Google Scholar. It works best if you have the specific title for the article. So maybe you search in Google Scholar, you find a paywall, you can't get it, you copy and paste that title into your library website and search that. Then you can log in with university credentials, and usually your university will have subscriptions to all of these different journals. So that's one really good reason to use the library website. I will do these videos based on using the library website. But whatever you do, it's time to look for scholarly articles. Don't stop with the general stuff. Don't look at blogs and op-eds and just assume you know what you're talking about. Now, you have to dig deeper. You have to. That's not negotiable. Now, Refining your search. We're not just going into the library website or Google Scholar and typing the same thing, like obesity. You're going to get a million hits. None of them are going to be really useful to you other than saying obesity is bad, right? So refine your search. How? Include your topic and contextual keywords in the search. So do type obesity, but then type in obesity and diet, obesity and exercises, obesity and sleep deprivation, whatever it may be, that hopefully you got a sense of from the general background that you've already gathered. So here's an example. I'm doing some research on trying to establish a more universal measurement of quality of life, something good for health and wellness, but that's not as concrete and specific as like, all right, what's your waist size, right? So here, just to demonstrate this is the library website at my university. I typed in quality of life. Well, that's a big topic. And the first thing you see here, what you're probably going to notice, is that many of these things are conference proceedings. They're books, right? That's what's going to happen when you search generally. Your library website is going to come back with a bunch of books, and you're going to be like, oh, the library website sucks. Well, no, your search sucked, right? If you're too general, that's what you're going to get. You're going to get books. You're going to have to get more specific. If you see a whole bunch of books right at the top, well, that's a good sign you need to narrow and refine your search. What does that look like? Well, maybe I want to look for a quality of life measurement, because that's what I'm trying to do in my research, is trying to figure out what's going to be an effective way to measure quality of life across cultural contexts. So now I've typed in quality of life plus measurement, and we get a few more things. We're still getting some books here, right? We're still getting some articles, but they're also both specific enough and more specific than I want right now. In adults with diabetes, maybe that's not really useful to me right now. Dermatology, clinical practice, that's not really what I'm going for. I need to be even more specific to get this specific in the right direction. So I refine my search further and include quality of life measurement and culture, because that's what I'm really interested in. Now we're getting somewhere. Look at these popping up. We've got articles here that look pretty interesting. The Cultural Vitality Index, intersecting indicators of arts, culture, and public health for quality of life measurements. That sounds great. That sounds interesting. I can also see just by looking at the results here how recent these things are. Okay, so that's 2003. That's nice too. I'm going to keep scrolling here. Here we see some stuff, accounting for culture in the measurement of health-related quality of life. Well, now that's really getting close to what I'm looking for here. So you can see that by refining the search, we can get more precise. This does not take long. It's like 3 minutes, right? But you need to refine the skill of refining the search. So topic and more specific keywords. You can just tack things on a lot of the time and you'll get closer to what you're going for, unless it starts pulling you in the wrong direction. We do see this article is a little older, but yeah, anyway, we're going in the right direction here. So that's the first 3 steps. The next step is to read the abstract and refine your quick glance protocol. What does that look like? So glad you asked. So the quick glance protocol here, I'm referring to kind of abbreviated as a QGP, just because I like the way it looks. Kind of looks like the face of someone trying to say that acronym. Anyway, here's my quick glance protocol. How relevant is it? How current is it? What kind of resource is it? Where was it published? These are the basic questions I want to know immediately when I look at it. So, how current is it? Well, this is from 1994, which is a pretty long time ago, but that could mean one of 2 things. 1, it's outdated. 2, it's seminal, meaning that it's influential and it's consistent. Either way, that on its face is not going to be enough for me to not want to look at this article. So I'm going to dig in a little bit further here. We can see a couple things. We can see that this is in fact a peer-reviewed journal. It's coming from a journal called the Quality of Life Research. Well, that sounds useful to me. I should probably look up some other resources from that journal, but first things first. I can also see where it's available. It's available online, which is good. I can see the authors, I can see publisher, all that good stuff in here. If there is an abstract, often it will be here. That makes your life easier if you can look at it to assess the immediate relevance. But if there is no abstract, I can click to it and I can find the article myself, and I can also quickly assess it using my further quick glance protocol applied to the article itself. So here's what the article looks like. Okay. Now, I've gotten to this point here and I'm looking at this and I can see why there's no abstract, because this is Well, it's just a general article summarizing several other studies about quality of life in different cultural contexts. So it's not exactly a research study, and it took me a couple steps to get to that point, but this is probably still useful for me because I'm seeing multiple different perspectives by multiple authors here looking at quality of life. What does it mean in these different contexts? So it's maybe not exactly what I was looking for right out of the gate, but it is still useful to me, and so that's helpful. Once I've decided this is useful for me, I'm going to need to save the article. So if you find an article that is useful to you in your topic, download it and save it. You can do that most of the time with your library website. Again, this might be the part where you run into paywalls on Google Scholar. You can usually get around that by using your library website, but do save the document. Use a consistent and descriptive file naming scheme. Do yourself a solid and make it easy to find later. So name the files sensibly and stick to that scheme. Have a folder on your desktop or on your flash drive or wherever that is labeled for this project or this topic, health literacy, quality of life measurement. I've got folders like that all over the place. Here's what I like, how I like to name my files. Authors, year, topic, in 2 to 3 words, whatever the topic is, so I can still read it on my screen. All right. Now, filing systems. Again, up to you. Some people like to use a spreadsheet where they have the author, the year, the topic, the journal, keywords, whatever it may be. You can do that if you like to be super organized. I've tried that a couple times. I usually don't do a very good job of that. There's also a lot of external programs such as EndNote that a lot of people who are professional academics use to make things consistent on their computer for referencing, citing, all that good stuff. So look into one of those if you expect to be doing this for the rest of your career. But a spreadsheet works too for an individual project. You can make an annotated bibliography. Many classes or assignments will require you to do this. So that would mean you get a Word document, you have the citation, and then you summarize the article on that document. And then you've got it all there summarizing your project. You can just have file folders. This is probably what I use most of the time because I like to be able to find things later. And like I said, I'm kind of an associative learner. But the best way to do this is probably to get an external program. Don't worry about that if you're an undergraduate. Do what makes sense for you, but do save the document. So here is the one of the cover pages from this document. I can see the authors, I can see the date, I can see all that stuff here. This is all the information I need to save the file and start building the citation. Here's what it looks like on my hard drive. You can see I've saved it in a folder with other similar articles here. I have saved this as the editors for this particular session, Fox, Rushby, and Parker, 1994, Quality, Life, and Culture. And now I can see it very easily. Now what you can also see here is how that's distinguished from the other articles I already got saved. Right? Okay, well this one is looking at cultural subjective well-being. Okay, that's useful. I can also see how current this is. I can see a really current one that I've got, right, 2020, quality of life measurements across the EU. But by looking at some of these different articles, I can very quickly start to get a general understanding of the topic and how the research has progressed over the years. So again, the quick glance protocol can be useful for that, getting that big picture. Now, step 6 is to reread the article front to back if deeper understanding is needed. When is deeper understanding needed, Jonathan? Good question, Jonathan. Good reasons to read in depth. Anytime a deeper understanding is needed, such as if you're going to be discussing it in class or presenting the paper for a discussion, such as in a seminar style lecture or style classroom. If you are going to use the article for a thesis, dissertation, or anything that will be peer reviewed, you are going to need to have a pretty good understanding of each individual article you are referencing. So that would be a good time to go back and reread them. If you want to adopt the methods in your own research, if you are a hard scientist or a social scientist and you like what the measures they're using, if you like the survey they're doing, the analysis, and you want to reference those measures, then you need to have a deeper understanding of that article and be able to apply it. But for most undergraduate applications, you're not going to need that. And for most lay populations, you're not going to have the level of expertise to be able to criticize those methods. We'll get to that going forward in the next, in part 3 of this video series. If you found it interesting, that's a great reason to reread it too. All of these are good reasons. Also to critically evaluate it or review it. That's a pretty good reason too. If you're going to be critical of something, you need to have a sophisticated understanding. Or in general, if you just want to learn. All of these are good reasons to reread an article. I'm not saying you shouldn't read the article front to back. I'm saying you shouldn't do that first. I'm saying that you should get a general understanding using a quick glance protocol. Now, going into any further detail here requires us to be methodologically and paradigmatically specific. What do I mean by that? I mean, the next two videos are going to focus on critical research, interpretive research, and social sciences, the major areas that we study in the field of communication. But by covering those in these next couple videos, you'll get a better understanding as to how to engage with scholarly research of all kinds. Let's get a quick preview of that, and then we'll wrap this video up. So paradigms, these are the researchers' worldviews. Remember that reading scholarly articles is in fact a skill to be practiced. It will get easier with time. But here are some general observations from engaging with research from these different paradigms. If we're talking about the critical or interpretive paradigm, we're usually talking about things that are more falling under the category of kind of rhetorical criticism, or even op-eds, or ethnography, or things along those lines. It's a pretty broad category, but I'm putting them here because these are usually extending out of the postmodernist philosophical kind of approach to things, which is based on kind of subjective standards of measurement and evidence, but there is still a requirement for evidence. It's just a little bit different than social science. But when we're reading these, this is kind of a caveat to what I've said before. Going in order is usually the way to go when you're reading these. There's not really any quick and easy way to get through those because you're going to have to engage with the material. However, that doesn't mean you can't still get a general understanding of the article. Easy ways to do that are spoiling the ending. My grandpa was the kind of guy who, anytime he picked up a book of any kind, he would read the last chapter first. And I said, Grandpa, why do you do that? He said, well, I want to know if it's worth my time. That's a great reason to do that. I didn't like doing that when it comes to novels because I like to be surprised. However, when it comes to academic articles, I always do that. I read the introduction and conclusion first so that I can figure out what they're saying, and then I can see how they build that argument. There's no shame in spoiling the ending. Now, with critical and interpretive, jargon is a challenge. By jargon, I usually mean technical language that is specific to the field. So the definitions, that's going to be important. You're going to spend a lot of time looking up definitions, and you should do that. So expect to spend a lot of time on these kind of articles, but you're going to get a lot out of them. Doesn't mean you can't start at the end and kind of get a big picture. As for social and hard science research, you probably won't understand the methods at this stage of your career. So I'm just going to say that right out of the gate here. Okay, don't frustrate yourself. That will get easier as you progress. But the introduction gives critical background and overview of the whole document. You should start there, or the abstract. The discussion is usually the most interesting because that's where the authors are escaping some of the constraints of talking about methodology and results, and they begin to explain why they think their research matters. That's where most of the talking points are. And the conclusions state implications most clearly and may direct you to other questions to ask and answer and other resources. So in my next two videos, we're going to talk about these two approaches separately to give you tips unique to each one, but these general tips can apply to any context. So let's keep this train rolling. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.